Dovid HaMelech's life was filled with challenge. He grew up in the shadow of his older brothers. But then he was anointed as king when there was another king ruling. And Shaul wanted to kill him. Avshalom led a revolt. Even when he was old, after he'd been the king for so many years, his son Adoniyahu declares himself king. Even before all of this, he earned his wife Michal by killing Goliath. But then Shaul tried giving her to someone else. His whole life was filled with challenge. How did he manage to beat Dovid HaMelech through all of that? The Gemara tells us, we read a pasuk in Tehillim, Ura chavodi, wake up my honor. Ura hanevel v'chinor. Yes, the violin and the harp. Oyira shachar, I will wake up the dawn. Says the Gemara, he had for himself an alarm clock. He had a harp. In the middle of the night, when the wind starts blowing, the harp started playing. And that's how he got up. Says the Gemara, what does he mean by the pasuk? Oyira shachar, I wake up daybreak, and daybreak doesn't wake me up. Ve'ein hashachar ma'orer osi. The Shulchan Aruch begins with a halacha, Yiskaber kari, should strengthen yourself like a lion. Shehu ma'or hashachar, you should wake up the daybreak. This is the shlita of the Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah says otherwise. Seems to be a major cultural difference between Sephardim and Ashkenazim. Mechaber says you should get up before daybreak, and the Ramah says at least get up in time to daven with a minyan. The climate may have had something to do with it. But that's not the discussion. On the words of the Mechaber, where the Mechaber says, Shehu ma'orer hashachar, says the Taz, says something very interesting. The Mechaber left out, V'lo yeh hashachar ma'orer oso, the daybreak should not wake you up, which is a complete statement of the Gemara. He's paraphrasing the Gemara. He left out the second half. So the Taz goes and explains that what Dovid HaMelech was referring to was not limited to what time he got up in the morning. This was symbolic. Dovid HaMelech was saying, I choose my Avodas Hashem. I set my agenda. I take responsibility for myself and what I believe is right. I do not wait for circumstances to dictate to me what it is that I've got to be concentrating on. The daybreak, that's something external, it's nature. Says Dovid HaMelech, I get up in the morning because I set my harp there. Not because daybreak has arrived. Circumstances do not affect me. I am determined. Ein shachar morer osi, circumstances do not in any way throw me off. I've set my path and that's where I'm going. Says the Taz, Dovid HaMelech was able to say that. He took full responsibility for himself. He was the one that set the agenda for his entire Avodas Hashem. None of us can be so bold. But the first part of it is true and something that we all have to do, which is don't spend your life being reactive to circumstances only. You've got to set your own priorities. You've got to determine your own derech for Avodas Hashem. And make sure to be consistent. We're not Dovid HaMelech, so circumstances will definitely make us deal with them. But that should not be the sum total of our Avodas Hashem. For so many people, Avodas Hashem is defined by just being reactive. So we can't ignore our circumstances. Dovid HaMelech could. When it comes to leadership, you can never allow yourself to lose focus. Yeah, there are always hiccups along the way. Don't get distracted. Certainly, don't gear off course. You have to set the agenda. You have to be determined. Whatever it is that you've got to do, that's what you're doing. This is very much in line with so many other things that we've been discussing up until now. There's so many leaders that spend their day reacting. What do you stand for? The contrary. The way you deal with circumstances has to be harmonious with your agenda to begin with. But life is not just reacting to circumstances. Leadership means you set direction on the basis of what you know is right. You know where it is that whatever group it is that you're trying to lead, or Klal Yisrael as a whole, you know where they've got to be going. You know what it is that they have to arrive at. So Dovid HaMelech knew what he wanted for Klal Yisrael. The challenges were endless that never interfered with his sense of right and wrong. To be unmoved by circumstances, certainly not be dictated by circumstances. Included in this is, of course, resilience. The ability not to lose yourself despite the challenges. People in leadership positions often collapse because of personal suffering. That was never the case with Dovid HaMelech. His dedication to Klal Yisrael was never in question. The fact that he was constantly struggling in life did not affect what it was that he believed in. What is the secret of resilience? How do you put up with so much? It's not that you ignore, that you deny. It's a simple coping mechanism until things get so tough that they're undeniable. How do you survive? It's dedication to what's right. It's that your dedication to what's right is so strong that nothing can shake it. Not allowing anything personal to get in the way. So yes, this is very much in line with the way we defined another, which is it's about the cause and not the person. How can Klal Yisrael suffer because of the leader's personal issues? So many of our leaders over the generations put up with personal suffering, physical, emotional, family issues. That in no way interfered with their dedication to Klal Yisrael, their availability to Klal Yisrael. This is true in any position of leadership. Not allowing anything to bring you down. You live the cause. You have to put up with everything else. There's so many examples of great Jewish leaders who suffered throughout the generations. Torture, imprisonment. Under all circumstances, including during the Holocaust, in the camps. Their greatness was never compromised. The Holocaust stories. Some of the most inspiring. I don't know how many of these biographies have been translated into English. The Admor Mitzan's Kloisenberg was probably one that stood out. I shouldn't say stood out more than everybody else, but lost his entire family, and had a big family. Regardless of how much he suffered and was beaten, he still offered leadership, guidance. Obviously, his closeness to Hashem never stopped. And then immediately after the Holocaust, he took the position of the leader of the survivors, the majority of whom were orphans. He took responsibility for the restoration of religious practice that was pretty much non-existent in the camps. Unmoved by his personal tragedies, came to the US and built his Hasidus and yeshivas, and then came to Eretz Yisrael. Built his communities, a hospital. Started life over again. Unmoved. Unmoved. The future of Klal Yisrael was more important, despite his personal suffering. He was a leader, a builder. There were many others who came out of there also to build. And yet so many came out of the Holocaust broken people. Leaders are not broken. Come what may, they're not broken. And they lead under all circumstances. They stand out even in the camps. There's greatness, maintaining their stature regardless of what's being done to them. The Gemara tells us something very interesting about Shlomo HaMelech. We don't really find this in the Navi, but Shlomo HaMelech was deposed of. Ashmedai, the king of the Shadim, replaced him, and it was unrecognized. There was this demon that posed as Shlomo HaMelech and got away with it. Shlomo HaMelech was roaming the streets, going from place to place, and everyone knew, the king was in Yerushalayim. The Gemara says something very interesting about Shlomo HaMelech. Not only did he rule over the world, he ruled over the heavens. He was the wisest man When he was deposed, he ruled over his stick. Malach al maklo. Well, what does it mean he ruled over his stick? So it's an expression to mean his only subject was his stick. It was the only thing that he was able to control. Chaim Shmuel Zichron Levracha used to say, Malach al maklo meant he had never lost a drop of royalty. Even though he ruled only over his stick, he was a king over his stick. He never sunk. He maintained his dignity, but much more than that. He was king over the stick. Doesn't make a difference what the circumstances are. The greatness is there. True leadership is never compromised, regardless of what one is subjected to. Nothing will ever be able to dehumanize or even humiliate the leader, regardless of how he's treated. And by the way, this is a quality of Klal Yisrael altogether. We've been scorned, stepped on, dehumanized so many times over. And we're still, as a people, very aristocratic. We are Mamlechas Kohanim Kodesh. We are a nation of leaders. We're a nation of leaders. As part of the Jewish personality altogether. But if one wants to be a leader among Jews, one feels the need for it, he's got to know it doesn't make a difference what you go through. Your resolve can never be watered down, can never be broken. As much as they try to wither away at it, it's got to remain. Dedication to what you know is right. And seeing to it that you do for Klal Yisrael what is necessary. Regardless of how much you suffer and how much you're humiliated. This is Malchus. This is that royalty. Of course, the great leader is the king, but every leader's got that in him. No one can ever bring you down. They can call you names, they can spit at you, they can torture you. But no one can ever bring you down. And very much at the root of it is it's the cause and not the person. It's about Klal Yisrael, not about the person. And personal suffering cannot in any way take away from the importance of the cause. We know what our leaders are like when they're old, when they're frail, when they're not so healthy. They continue to push themselves. They continue to lead. They don't lose their sparkle. As Moshe Rabbeinu, the pasuk says, Aslecho. He looked young. He looked young to the very end. He was 120 years old. He didn't look it. Of course, Moshe Rabbeinu, everything about him was miracle. But we've seen in our leaders, the young at spirit for good. The youthfulness. Perhaps they become wiser with age, but they don't lose their passion, their ideal. If anything, they become more passionate, and things become more clear. You know, we're a generation that is, Baruch Hashem, spoiled rotten. Life is so comfortable. We complain that things that are real, for realities, I mean, they're and all these meaningless things become very meaningful to us. And we're in pain, often over nothing, sometimes over things of more substance. And the suffering takes over our lives. Whether it's physical, whether it's emotional, a family issue, a personal issue. It interferes with our functionality. It preoccupies us. Learning is difficult. Davening is difficult. Don't have the patience to be nice to people. Leadership means we're affected by that. You know what you live for. You understand that Hashem is waiting for your prayers on behalf of Klal Yisrael. You understand that you're building yourself in your learning because as a greater person, you'll be able to do more for Klal Yisrael. You take that seriously. No, you don't ignore your pain, but it doesn't take over you. The essence of your life is unaffected. Your passion is unaffected. In truth, when people are passionate, these trivial things don't bother them as much. When you're passionate and you're fighting for something, that becomes your life. You're not out of commission. Because your gadget stopped working. Because someone was nasty to you. We're so frail. Because there's not something higher that you identify with to the point that you can understand that everything else is really trivial. Leadership is standing up and being dedicated to what you know is the most important thing. And then the little stuff doesn't bother you. Yeah, you can take note of it. but it doesn't take over your life. It doesn't inhibit your ability to be upbeat and functional, productive. Yes, Dovid HaMelech, a whole life of suffering and a life of leadership. Leadership. He established the kingdom for Klal Yisrael. The leaders have to be his descendants. And Dafka, he's the one that had to be the one that didn't have a moment's rest, all suffering. You shouldn't suffer. Hashem should give us all good lives. But it's not like you'd have to need that. Let your passion for the cause carry you through whatever comes. Let that energize you and keep you upbeat. And allow that to overshadow all the challenges. That's leadership. Hashem should be with all of us to really live that way.